Hey guys, Coffee Cranks here. Today I'm back with another Path of Exile build that I made in the recent few days, which is Lightning Reave. I thought I'd bring Reave back to its former glory, since last time I played it was back in the Breach League. For those who follow my stream, they know that originally I was intended to make Poison Reave, but the results were pretty bad and the build just completely failed. I think my main mistake was not really understanding how to scale melee and trying to do something that I always do with elemental skills, and it just didn't work. But then I found this really cool version on POE Ninja that uses 2 Paradoxicas to do double damage and penetrate elemental resistance. At the end, you're not really scaling Reave, you're scaling elemental damage, so you want a bunch of flat damage on your gear, and also you can use any kind of damage. You can use lightning, you can use fire, you can use cold. I use lightning because it's just higher damage numbers. There's a reason why so many people on POE Ninja are using Paradoxicas. It's just a powerhouse of a weapon. You can do practically anything with it. I want to give credit to the dude whose build I found on POE Ninja, and I'll put the link in the description so you guys can check it out. And I believe he's using double strike. So if you want to use a strike skill, for example, you can put lightning strike instead, and you can then use the nodes on the tree that utilize the strikes. Lightning Strike would have probably more damage, but Reave just has a better area of effect, and I think considering that Val Reave can get you up to 10 stacks of Reave, that's really useful for clearing the packs in the maps. I'll put some clips of doing maps and running bosses at the end of the video, and for now, let's jump into Path of Building. The build has roughly 3.7 million DPS, and if you want to check the full potential of how much DPS you can actually get with everything up, so you need to check the flasks, you need to check Val Reave itself, and you also need to check Val Smite because this one gives you a lot of extra damage. And then you see the number 32 million. But don't get too excited, you won't have 32 million all the time. This build is extremely tanky. I wouldn't go as far as call it hardcore viable, but it's pretty defensive. For starters, you get 30k evasion rating, which gives you 84% evade chance, and 26k armor, which gives you 71% physical damage reduction, and that is without the flasks. You also have 100% spell suppression, and you also have 100% elemental avoidance. And that's not including all the extra layers of defense, such as permanent fortification from the Ascendancy, also the amulet that gives you additional elemental damage reduction equal to half your chaos resistance. So if your chaos resistance capped and also have 78% like I do, then you'll get half of that as elemental damage mitigation. And I'm always obsessed with defensive layers, so I also added blind support for Ancestral Protector Totem. So when he hits a tanky rare or a boss that's not blind resistant, then this enemy will be blinded and he will not be as likely to hit you. I personally hate when Blood Rage makes you lose life over time. I know some people are totally fine with it, but it just grinds my gears so much. So what I did is I grabbed the mastery on the tree. Every 4 seconds, regenerate life equal to 1% of armor and evasion rating over 1 second. And that pretty much solves the problem, so your life gets back to full all the time. I tried adding golems to the build, like for example, you could add a stone golem or you could add a lightning golem, but the problem is they keep dying so much in high tier maps, like you will have to resummon them 3 times per map, so I dropped that idea altogether. If you don't mind the hassle, you can totally replace blind in the totem setup with a golem. Champion Ascendancy is just perfect for this build. I really loved leveling with it. It felt really tanky. And you get so much stuff. You get both defensive layers and offensive layers. I would first grab Unstoppable Hero and Fortitude. So once you have that 20 fortification going, you can get so much stuff from it. You get attack speed, you get armor and evasion rating, and you also cannot be stunned. Plus, don't forget that the belt gives you permanent onslaught while fortified, so you will always have onslaught. And on top of that, the actual fortification bonus that gives you 1% less damage from hits per fortification, so you get 20% less damage from hits. The next two nodes to get are First to Strike, Last to Fall, and Inspirational. You can get them in any order. It's not as important. I would get maybe Inspirational first, just because you get so much increased effect of non-curse ores from your skills. So for example, you get a lot more Evasion and Armor from Determination and Grace, and because of the belt that scales your damage from the lowest of Armor and Evasion rating, you get extreme amount of damage from it. So this will give you a lot of damage and also a lot of defenses at the same time. And also you can activate your banner at no costs. First to Strike, Last to Fall is such a versatile node. First, your hits permanently intimidate enemies that are on full life, meaning they will take 10% increased damage while they're on full life. And then when you drop to low life, you gain adrenaline for 20 seconds. That's a lot of time, and what adrenaline does is it gives you 100% increased damage, 25% increased attack, cast, and movement speed, and 10% additional physical damage reduction. So you get a lot more reduction from it on top of everything else. And also don't forget that you recover 25% of life when you gain adrenaline. So it's like an instant life flask or like a war cry, right? So this is really, really good. Getting this node will be really meaningful in, let's say, boss fights or just difficult situations. If you buy Forbidden Flame and Flash, you also get an extra node from Slayer Ascendancy, so you get Headsman, and what it does is it gives you Culling Strike on 20%. And yeah, it's not 10%, it's 20%. I cannot overstate how good this is. So when I was fighting bosses and, you know, they slowly keep getting damaged and losing their life, and suddenly, boom, at 20%, they just completely vanish. It was awesome. You also gain 10% increased attack speed for 20 seconds when you kill a rare or unique enemy, which happens a lot while mapping, and you gain 10% increased movement speed for 20 seconds when you kill an enemy, and that means any enemy. So while mapping, essentially you gain plus 10% movement speed. When it comes to the tree progression, I would get clusters early on, and if you want to shed some nodes off the tree and you don't have enough levels, I would maybe drop life cluster here, life cluster here, and these three nodes that give you a bunch of extra accuracy and attack speed, they're not as important and you would be just fine without them. I spent around 60 divines on gear, and gearing this character is fairly straightforward because you mostly have unique items and you only have several rare items in the build. But keep in mind, it's really late in the league and I struggled so much finding certain items, and at this point I cannot even buy upgrades anymore because nobody is selling them. It's crazy. So people really stopped playing Path of Exile after like a month and a half, and we're already 2 months in, so at this point the league is pretty much dead. So if you really want to buy new gear, it's gonna be problematic. Like 60 divines was already overpaying. I would say this build would probably be around 40 in the fresh or like fresher league. Like let's say like, you know, a month in, 40 divines would probably be a reasonable price to pay for everything. You want to pay attention to the roll values on unique items because some of them are just more important than other ones. For example, on Paradoxica, having more elemental resistance penetration is really good because it boosts your damage quite significantly. Keep in mind that both Paradoxica and the Devouring Diadem are veiled items, meaning that some mods on them might vary, and it's not always going to be the same. So on Paradoxica, for example, attacks with this weapon deal double damage is a static mod. It's always there, no matter the version of the weapon. But Strength and Intelligence together with Critical Strike chance and attacks with this weapon penetrate elemental resistances are two varied mods, and you want those exact mods with maybe different numerical values. On the Devouring Diadem, the Veiled mod is Resistances, so you can get Lightning and Chaos, Fire and Chaos, or Cold and Chaos, depending on which resistance you're missing the most. Loreweave is a normal unique, and what you want on Loreweave, you want to prioritize maximum resistances. 78% is the maximum value, and that's the one you want to get because maximum resistances, even 3%, are extremely important. Then you want to prioritize increased elemental damage, then maybe life and everything else. So the way Divine Blessing works is it turns an aura that has a reservation, for example, Wrath, right? It has 50% mana reservation. It turns it into a temporary skill that you can cast, and then it times out and you can cast it again. So it's like a buff, basically. March of the Legion specifically gives you +5 to level of socketed aura gems, which is super huge. And it also increases the level of Divine Blessing support. It makes it 25 instead of 20, so you get a lot more bang for your buck. If you can find a reasonably priced March of the Legion with the Corruption +2 to level of socketed aura gems, you will get +7 to level of socketed aura gems in total. And I can show you what it does to DPS. So for example, right now we have 3.7 million DPS. And if I say +7 to level of socketed aura gems, you get 4.2 million DPS. So not bad. But it's really hard to find a reasonably priced corrupted March of the Legion at this point in the league, so it might not be so easy. Eternal Damnation was something that the person that I looked up on POE Ninja was using. I didn't really change it to anything else, even though you could. I think I just like the idea of having a bunch more defense, but if you really don't care about that as much, you can also get a lot more damage in the slot. Make sure to anoint your amulet with Arcane Blows, and Arcane Blows, if you check on the tree, damage with weapons penetrates lightning resistance and increase lightning damage with attack skills. It gives you a bunch of extra damage, so this one is really good and important to anoint. Perseverance is a core item of this build, so for example, replacing it with Mage Blood, I would not recommend because I think this is just a really important piece and the build will change significantly if you replace it with Mage Blood. So what it does is it gives you increased attack damage per 200 of the lowest of armor and evasion ratings. So right now without flasks I have lowest 26k armor, so it takes the lowest between the two, so this is armor, right? 26k armor, so if you divide it by 200 you'll get about 130% increased attack damage, which is super huge. And also on top of that, it gives you increased maximum life, some cold resistance, and permanent onslaught, which is again really important. The other remaining uniques are Forbidden Flame and Flash. As you saw, we just get Headsman, Ascendancy, and then Watcher's Eye. So what you want on the Watcher's Eye is damage penetrates lightning resistance while affected by Wrath. So anytime you cast Wrath as a Divine Blessing, you get lightning resistance penetration on top of that. So that's really good. If you can get a second roll on Watcher's Eye, second mod, that's really good, but don't sweat it. It's really hard to get and normally it's really expensive, so I wouldn't bother. Because there are only 3 rare items in this build when it comes to the main gear section, it's really hard to cap your resistances and attributes, so be extremely careful when buying gear and make sure that your resistances are capped at the end. So for example, on the gloves, you really want attack speed. And you probably want chaos resistance, life, and potentially an open suffix to craft additional resistances. The physical damage and fire damage to attacks is not important on it. If you can get lightning damage to attacks, that's awesome. Or even potentially fire or cold, like the higher roll, that's good, but don't really obsess over it. It's not as important. It will add damage for sure, but getting that item will be extremely hard, and I honestly don't have a good way to craft it. It's just really complicated to get the combination of everything at the same time. Maybe earlier in the league it was easier with Necropolis. Right now it's just not gonna happen. And also don't forget about Syrian Exarch and Eater of Worlds influence. For the rings, again, make sure to cap your attributes and resistances. So as you can see, I got some resistance here. Both of them are amethyst rings to cap my chaos resistance, and there's a little bit of chaos resistance as explicit on this ring. And what you really want on top of life, of course, is to have some elemental damage with attack skills and to have lightning damage to attacks as a flat roll. So these two can come in any shape or form. For example, you can craft it with a bench, you can get it as explicit. Here you see it's a fractured mod. So I didn't craft those. I honestly just got them off trade and then I crafted the remaining mod myself. So for example, on this one, lightning damage to attacks. On this one, I again crafted lightning damage to attacks. And then you want to apply catalysts to it that increase elemental damage, so it boosts your elemental damage even further. When it comes to cluster jewels, you only want 2 large cluster jewels and make sure that they add 8 passive skills at most. That is really important. Make sure that the added small passive skills grant 12% increased attack damage while dual wielding, because they can vary. You either want dual wielding or you want increased attack damage with swords. Either one of those is fine. And what you want on those, both cluster jewels are pretty much the same. You want Feed the Fury, Fuel the Fight, and Heavy Hitter. There might be a better combination for those, so you can check the DPS numbers in POE, but I think this one is slightly more affordable. So there was one more combination that had a little bit better DPS, but also it was a lot more expensive. And as you can see, this one is really good because it gives you a bunch of leech. So that's really good. You get attack damage leeched as life, and you also get attack damage leeched as mana. So you will never struggle with mana or life as long as you can leech. And that's why I wouldn't recommend, for example, running maps with cannot be leeched from monsters. This is really not good because all your leech will just disappear and you will struggle a lot more in those. For the rare jewels, and you have 3 remaining, you want Corrupted Blood cannot be inflicted on you on at least one of those, and as you can see, I got it right here. You also want to increase maximum life at all times. You definitely want to cap the remaining resistances if you're missing those. And also the important mods on those will be Critical Strike Multi with anything that applies, like one-handed melee weapons, swords, any crit multi that you can get. The better roll, the better, but sometimes it's just really hard to get the combination of those. And the second best, I would say, is attack speed with swords, or attack speed while dual wielding, whatever attack speed mod that you can get. And yeah, these will also boost your DPS, but not as much as a crit multi. So crit multi is definitely better. For the Pantheon, I prefer personally Lunaris and Yugal. You don't really need Brine King because we have elemental avoidance and we also cannot be stunned, so you basically lose all the benefit from Brine King. And Lunaris is really good because you have a chance to avoid projectiles, you have reduced elemental damage taken if you have been hit recently, avoid projectiles that have chained, and also you get some additional physical damage reduction in increased movement speed while mapping, so that's pretty good. Yugal is good because it gives you reduced effect of curses on you, so that's really nice to have if the map has a bunch of curses, and like for example temporal chains can be really nasty. At least you get 30% reduced effect of curses. And also reduced reflected damage. I honestly did not try physical reflect maps, I don't run them, but you can see if with this Pantheon is good enough and you can run them, that might work, because we don't do too much physical damage, but we do some physical damage, so just be careful. I didn't talk about gems, but they're pretty straightforward. So the main setup is you use Val, Reave, ideally you want 2120, which is fairly cheap to get. Volatility, multi-strike, awakened elemental damage with attacks, awakened elemental focus, and increased critical damage. So all the awakened gems are not expensive, except multi-strike. That's why I only have the normal multi-strike here. If you're filthy rich and you feel like investing more money, you can always get awakened multi-strike. The other gems are Automation, Blood Rage, and Stillskin. Put them in one of your weapons, and this way Blood Rage and Stillskin will be triggered automatically in a loop, so you don't have to worry about it. Don't forget to activate Automation for it to actually work. Another one is Whirling Blades, Ancestor Protector, and Blind. So anytime you Whirl Blade or use Ancestor Protector, they will eventually trigger Blind on the mobs that they hit. It has some chance, so it's not like 100% chance to get Blind, but eventually, especially Ancestor Protector will make the mobs blinded, and it will really help you against really beefy and dangerous rares. For example, I think it does a lot against Soul Eaters personally, and also against bosses if they're not resistant to it. Don't forget to put all your auras into the helmet, because the helmet actually has 25% increased reservation efficiency. If you put them anywhere else, you just won't have enough mana to cast them all. So you will use Determination for armor, Grace for evasion, Purity of Elements for extra elemental resistances, and also Elemental Ailment Immunity. This is where the Elemental Ailment Immunity coming from. And you would use Defiance Banner for even more armor and evasion. So that's really good. The gloves will have Precision, Arrogance, Mark on Hit, and Assassin's Mark, and make sure that Precision is linked with Arrogance and Mark on Hit is linked with Assassin's Mark. They can all be linked together, it's not a problem, but make sure at least these two are connected and these two are connected. So Precision with Arrogance makes it so your Precision reserves life instead of mana, and we don't really have any mana left from the other 4 auras. So this is important. Precision can only be activated when used with life. And it doesn't reserve that much life. It reserves a little bit, but honestly, you'll be fine. So you still have plenty of life left. Mark on Hit with Assassin's Mark makes it so that when you hit a mob, you will get Assassin's Mark. And it's really good because it gives you power charges, crit strike chance, and crit strike multi, and even grants you some life and mana when mobs are killed. The last but not least setup is in the boots, and you get Wrath, Val Smite, Inspiration, and Increased Duration. So both Wrath and Val Smite has a tag Aura, which means they can be supported by Divine Blessing. So Val Smite has like 2 uses, so you can use it on bosses, and it basically doubles your damage. So you see 3.7 million if I activate it. Oops. It's 7.4 million. And Wrath, use it all the time. So Wrath has about 12% duration, 12 seconds duration. So anytime you're running along the map, every 10 seconds you can click on Wrath. And yeah, it's not super annoying. It's a little bit annoying to do it, but also it gives you a lot of damage. So if you drop the Wrath, the damage is not as great. So make sure to use Wrath. Inspiration makes them not so expensive. So because Divine Blessing makes the skills use a lot more mana, without the Inspiration, you will actually, you see, you get a warning, you do not have enough energy shield and mana to use Wrath. So it's really important to have Inspiration support because it brings down the mana costs. And obviously you need increased duration to make them last longer. So that's it for today, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And next up, I'll show you a map and a couple bosses I've done on this build. And yeah, if you have any further questions, please stop by my stream at twitch.tv/coffeecranked. I stream 3 to 5 days a week in the evening, Central European time. So I'll be very happy to see you there, and I'll see you in the next video. Please don't. I'm a very light sleeper, so you don't even need to scream. I'm gonna wake up from like anything. Ooh. All right. Let's go. Yeah, I guess these are the best two. No. I mean, that's a third one. So if they break any more, that's not gonna be good. No card.